that in me you will have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. Why do we walk around so miserable, so beaten up by life, so, I don't know what's going on, I'm just making it through, I'm just getting by, I'm just this, I'm just that. Man, we are supposed to be of good cheer because Jesus has already overcome the world, and if you've invited him into your heart and he lives inside of you, guess what? We're overcomers too. If he that overcame the world is living inside of you, then you can overcome your circumstances, your troubles, and your disappointments. Your momentary disappointments, your momentary issues and tribulations, if you focus on Jesus, what they are doing in your life is achieving to you an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. Now listen, if you're going through a hard time and you're not focused on Jesus, it is not going to achieve for you eternal glory. But you can allow it to through Jesus Christ. So many of us have been disappointed in our lives, and we've used it as an excuse for not being where we ought to be. We live in a culture where we blame everybody but ourselves, right? It's your fault I'm not where I want to be because you disappointed me. I had a bad dad, I had a bad mom, I had a bad childhood, I had a bad boss, I had a bad job, I had a bad church, I had a bad this, I had a bad that. And this is our disappointment after disappointment after disappointment has given us an excuse to be where we ought not to be. And we blame everybody else but ourselves. When we're called to follow Christ, we are supposed to be moving towards him. Each day we're getting closer and closer. We're going through these hard times, but it's achieving for us an eternal weight of glory. We're moving and moving and moving towards him. Here's the problem. So often in a moment of disappointment, it slows us down from our momentum towards Jesus. And some of us allow a momentary disappointment, a momentary setback to stop us in our tracks, and we're no longer moving towards Jesus. See, there's two things that can happen when disappointments come into your life. It can either stop your momentum or it can propel your momentum. I am convinced that you can do anything and everything, and nothing and no one can upset your plans. You know what this means? This means the disappointments that you've had in your life, God didn't put them into your life, but he will use them, right? And it won't upset the plans that he has for you. So nobody can upset the plans that God has for your life. So stop blaming other people because they don't have the authority to stop God's plans in your life. Do you realize that? It's not somebody else's fault. So I don't know who disappointed you and how hurt you were, but that what they did to you cannot upset God's plans for your life. If we focus on the unseen, not the seen, which is momentary, he can do anything and everything, and nothing and no one can upset his plans. Don't let sin against you produce sin in you. Somebody might have done something to you, but don't allow that to produce sin in you. You need to remember who you are in Jesus Christ. You don't need to sniffle and cry and get prayed for. You need to just say, you know what? I am who he says I am, and I can do what he says I can do. And I'm going to walk in it. Right? There's some boldness and courage every once in a while. I want to tell you, the "but God intended it for good" can be your story. He was beat up, but God intended it for good. He was faked his own death, but God intended it for good. Thrown into a well, but God intended for good. Sold into slavery, but God intended for good. Sent into prison, but God intended for good. Everything that happened along the way that was bad and a disappointment, but God intended it for good. Can I tell you right now, some of you have the storm cloud of disappointment over your head. But if you focus on God and allow it just to be a momentary thing, keep your eyes fixed on him, understand that someday, it might be a week from now, it might be a year from now, it might be 10 years from now, you'll say, but God intended it for good. Because even though I went through this hard time, even though I went through this struggle, even though I went through this disappointment, God used it and moved me in a different direction, and my momentum towards him, God meant it for good.